Hey friends, I got dogpiled by TERFs. You might be thinking this isn't unusual since I have a reputation for being strongly against these benighted goons. But normally it's just an intrusion on my blog that the commenters explode all over. And then I can sit back somewhat aloof from the fray. It's also the case that I'm a cis man, so I'm not their typical target. They are much more comfortable with abusing trans women. But this time, I got flooded on Twitter by the anti-trans brigade, which ought to have just rolled off my privileged back, but their approach was to lie and misrepresent what I said, which I take personally. Mainly, it was the first time I got to witness the tactics of TERFs directly. So here's where it began. Richard Dawkins endorsed a terrible, bigoted, and long-winded statement by a mob of TERFs trying to justify discrimination against trans women. This one fellow asked, "I wonder how P.Z. Myers is going to take this?" Which is a little peculiar, since Dawkins can sign anything he damn well pleases, and that imposes on me no obligation to follow suit. I assumed it was a sincere question, though, so I simply said, "It's an anti-trans manifesto cloaked in the language of feminism, so I wouldn't sign it." It was not a sincere question. It was a taunt made under the assumption that I would somehow find Dawkins' opinion on trans rights significant and troubling, that I would quake and have to rethink my position. So he followed up with several tweets, which I paid no attention to. This is a common pattern with creationists too. Yammer at me, get nothing out of me but some eye rolling, which they can't see, and then declare victory. So I finally noticed when he says, "I'm still waiting for the embryologist P.Z. Myers to clarify whether or not he thinks trans women," yikes, hyphenated even, "are females." He seems reluctant to answer. And here is where I triggered all the TERFs. To me, you see, female has a very narrow meaning. As I say here, it refers to individuals that produce ova. I've spent many years working with animals that I sort into categories: fish, flies, grasshoppers, spiders, which I separate out into males and females for purposes of controlling their reproduction. It's not a term I'm comfortable applying to people, because it's extremely reductive. So I don't. Trying to pin me down to identify people by their mode of reproduction is annoying, and I reject it, especially since we normally don't discuss other people's reproductive status. We also don't use it to make statements about their humanity. I made the mistake of trying to briefly state my position on Twitter by saying that by the technical definition, many cis women are not female. Not because I agree with that definition, quite the opposite actually, but because I reject the standard TERFy approach of trying to pigeonhole human beings by their chromosomes or genitalia or hormone levels or whatever trivial trait they've battened on today. As I was soon to discover, the TERFs were going to misinterpret this to mean, I don't think someone is a woman if they can't have babies. Nope. Woman is a far broader term that encompasses a host of phenotypes and behaviors. I'm happy to say trans women are women, just as I'm happy to say that menopausal or sterile or childless by choice women are women. I am registering my opposition to identifying someone by their mode of reproduction, as if that's the entire core of their identity. Then the deluge of clueless tweets began. Here's an example from the same guy. "He knows a woman doesn't stop being a female when she has a correct hysterectomy." Correct. So what? That's my point. "He pretends every individual must conform to the group when he knows that it's the group as a whole that should exhibit those traits." That's interesting. Not much self-reflection there, though. Yes, I know we don't simply move an individual from one category to another when one trait changes, because There are multiple traits that identify the individual. I'm not the one denying trans women membership in the category woman because they don't tick off arbitrary boxes in their changing list of things that makes a person a woman. Figure it out, guy. It's the properties of the group as a whole that matter. Why are you now trying to exclude people on the basis of one or two individual properties? So now the fun begins. The mob has decided that I don't believe sex exists, that there's no such thing as biological sex. So this person objects to rejecting the idea that biosex exists, which is not something I've ever claimed. Sex is real. I have no problem saying that. What I object to is narrow definitions of sex and gender that aim to oppress and exclude. Of course it doesn't matter at all to the TERFs that I can plainly say biological sex exists. They're on a roll now. So I get this nonsense. He's a biologist who believes girls and women infertile for any reason are not to be female. Magically, our sex develops at puberty and ceases to exist at menopause and sometimes earlier. Some women never even develop a sex. Science! One small problem with that is that, no, I never said that. And no, I don't think that. That's silly. It's so helpful in an argument to lie about what the other believes and then rail against that. I've seen an awful lot of that tactic lately. It went on and on. Then people want to argue that I deny the existence of male and female sexes. Do you think that observable and consistent pattern, eggs or ovules, sperm or pollen, is a meaningful biological phenomenon? Well then, let's name it. I propose male and female. You? That would be devastating, I suppose, if ever I'd been claiming that males and females don't exist. But sure, I call them males and females too. What's the problem? Curiously, though, after all these people have been calling me out for claiming that the lack of eggs or ovules, sperm or pollen means that such individuals do not have a sex, we're right back into the reductive pattern of categorizing people by whether they have eggs or sperm. I'd say that there are other patterns, that someone can be a woman even if they don't carry eggs. But here we are again with TERFs arguing for gonads or gametes being definitive. At this point, I was just blocking lots of people. If they couldn't think beyond their own dogma, goodbye, I'm not interested. So now the silly people come out. Oh look, blocked for pointing out that in mammals, sex is binary and immutable. Biology is transphobic. Well then, isn't the existence of every trans man and trans woman a clear refutation of the claim that sex is binary and immutable? People seem to be changing sexes all the time. Someone noticed that I said what my preferred pronouns are in my profile. Oh my gosh. He, him is literally the first thing in his profile. Critical thinking, not he, his strong point. Maybe they could have stopped at some point and realized that, gosh, I don't deny the existence of men and women after all. But no, they've got an internal narrative that must be maintained at all costs, without regards for reality. And speaking of an accelerating retreat from reality, we exclude males from the sex class of females. Okay, define male, define female. If you're going to end up defining them as the previous twit did by sperm and egg, then you're going to find yourself in the contradictory and reductive position I was arguing against. And then you're the ones trying to categorize human beings by their reproductive status. When you say women are not allowed to stand up for themselves, I fear for your female students. You stop saying the N-word, but it's okay to bash women? See, who cares about reality when you can make stuff up? I have not said that women are not allowed to stand up for themselves. Nor have I said it's okay to bash women. Also, I guess, when did you stop saying the N-word has become the new, When did you stop beating your wife? Because I've never done either. One last bit. You can always rely on TERFs to drag the pseudoscience into the play. So here we go. The rest of the genes on Y while having only X. Okay, grammar's not their strong suit either. There are thousands of genetic differences between those who have Y, male, and those who do not, female. Again, asserting that male equals Y chromosome, female equals X chromosome. This is way too great a simplification of the complexities of sex determination and differentiation. And how, if the Y chromosome has somewhere between 50 and 75 protein coding genes, do we get these thousands of genetic differences? But worst of all is that citation. It's from the NAS, which is not the National Academies of Sciences. It's from a wingnut fringe group called the National Association of Scholars, with a history of promoting racist and homophobic nonsense. Reading it, it's a long-winded ramble through a lot of irrelevant stuff, like the origin of life on Earth and prokaryotic versus eukaryotic reproduction, to conclude that boys have sperm and girls have eggs, and therefore there are only two sexes. I wish they'd make up their minds. Are they going to be reductionists to make everything about gametes? Or are we going to assess sex on the basis of the group as a whole, regardless of what gametes an individual makes? I am not a sperm cell, nor am I an egg cell, and neither are you. We're more complex and diverse than that. And I wouldn't say to certain groups of people that they do not deserve the full range of human rights because TERFs find them icky. I'm also going to block them right and left because I'm not going to argue over people's humanity, nor am I the best person to stand for trans rights. They can do that themselves just fine. Thank you very much. Okay, that's enough. I'll just close by saying trans women are women, trans men are men, and that I support trans rights. It's that simple. And that TERFs can just f*** off.